and welcome to the Open Era Podcast. My name is Devang and Simon. I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Simon Bushel. Bush, it's 2024. Happy New Year, officially, sir.
Thank you very much. This very same to you as well. 2024 rolls around. I am always a fan of the even numbers, much more so than the odd ones. Yeah. I don't know why, but that's how I like to live my life.
Fully believe only good things happen in even years as well. I was born in an even year, so I'm biased. What about you?
Born in an odd year, and I'll never let myself live it down.
Yeah, see? Checks out. Yeah. Proof is in the pudding. Simon, so we usually do a fireside chat around the holidays to chat about some non-tennis things that we've been thinking about throughout the year, and we wanted to do this again. So though it's delayed, this is your Open Era holiday fireside chat with some tennis mixed in, I'm sure, along the way, including in 2 challenges remaining, Simon. So I realized in the process of going over our notes that I can't remember much of what happened in 2023 sports-wise, and I work in sports, but a lot of stuff happened, so perhaps we just start with how that year was for you.
It was an interesting year for me. I wrote in the notes that I think there's usually a good opportunity for us in these fireside chats to get outside of ourselves a little bit, to actually stretch our legs, stretch our arms, whatever limb you want to stretch outside of the tennis world. And I think it's a good place to start with some personal reflections, personal reflections or wins of 2023. I don't know whether it counts as a win, but I stopped reading the news every day, Dev. This happened to me about a third of the way through the year, and I sort of made the decision that I was, unless it was something that I was actively following, I usually try to keep it to once a week, oftentimes once a month now, and just being detached from it. Like, I'm still informed, but the immediacy of trying to keep on top of absolutely everything, I realized wasn't particularly healthy. And I also realized that I'm not any less informed now in that cadence than I was reading it every day. And I really don't feel like it's made me not being in it every single day. It's not made a massive difference in my life in that regard. I feel like it's only positive to me.
That's fascinating. I mean, I'm someone who probably consumes a lot of news, I would say, in my day-to-day, including almost right when I get up. So I feel like I did definitely notice a change, I think, during the year in which reading the news had taken a different toll, and I did start feeling that feeling you described, Bush. So I'm impressed you were able to do that. How did you fill the void with just other things? I guess.
I played a lot of games this year. Tried to go outside a bit more in that regard. I don't know. I think I was chatting to a friend of mine the other day about this, and I think there is a difference between tuning out completely and basically saying that you don't want to be informed, and being informed but more at a distance, or not being so reactive. And I think that's where I wanted to lean on it, which is to just get outside of the reactivity of everything and just sort of be a little more measured in terms of the things that I'm reading and consuming around that space. That being said, I think there's a huge advantage to being informed when it comes to things like protest and mutual aid and activism, to make sure that you're on the ground and being available to do those things when they happen. But for the other stuff, I mean, it's kind of a wash, Dev. I'd encourage more people to do it if you can do.
No, I'm with you, and I'd like to follow your advice. I don't know how successful I'll be. I think I'm still finding myself just on Twitter, not even posting, but just reading it. And the quality has obviously gotten worse and worse. So Lord knows what that's doing to my psyche. But yeah, I think you're onto something here. So even to just refine what you consume or see what you like the best. I think I found myself, or for a lot of years, listening to a lot of podcasts, and that was the way I consumed a lot of information. And I mean, it's involved in a lot of aspects of my day-to-day life, but I did find myself pivoting less to that towards the end of the year. So maybe silence is bliss, Simon, as I say that on an audio medium.
What about you? Do you have any personal reflections from 2023? Anything that stands out? Any top lines that immediately come to mind when you think about the year as a whole?
Highs and lows. the cliche. I will use that here. A lot of good moments, moving in with my partner and traveling to some really cool places, and my sister getting married. Those are all excellent and awesome things. And then my dad's health problems, obviously not great, and dealing with that. So I feel like, yeah, like a lot of years, ups and downs. But I did find myself maybe fully recognizing how different life is maybe than it was 3 years ago, just for me and then for everyone in general, and then kind of taking a step back and taking stock of what has happened since then. So I feel like it was a very eventful year, but also so much so that I had trouble remembering like things that didn't happen directly to me, which I guess makes sense, right? When I was going through this list, like I barely remember who won the Super Bowl, and that seems a bit crazy to me. So
Wait, who did win the Super Bowl? So this is KC? Is that what happened this year?
yeah, I think so.
Jesus
I think
Christ.
they did. Yeah, I think they did. Yeah.
I mean, I'll follow up with that. My trip to Japan was amazing. I had such a great time. It was so good to go to Asia finally and visit a country. And we spoke about my love of the public transit there and all the food and everything else, and just a general different scene. I feel like I'm getting a little long in the tooth for Vancouver sometimes in terms of its rugged individualism that you get in Canada, and especially within the city of Vancouver.
They should put that on a slogan. What's that new mayor up to, Bush? Send that in.
I don't know, beating homeless people up. whatever
Jesus.
floats people's boats these days. Shouldn't laugh about that. It's pretty horrendous.
Yeah.
I guess on a personal note as well, like just from a professional standpoint, taking more of a leadership role from a sort of creative lens in the work that I do, and realizing that communication it's really fucking difficult, Dev, when it comes to creativity and subjectivity, about trying to make sure that you can articulate a point really concisely. I am acutely aware of the irony of me saying that on a podcast where you have to try and acutely and, where you have to succinctly make your point. God, the irony of even that sentence. Dev, it's hard, is what I'm trying to say. It's rewarding, but hard.
I'm curious about this because in that sense, like, are you communicating most often in the video medium, or is it through like calls? Like, how have you found that side of it? Because I know you work with people that are not in your location as well.
Totally, and I think like actually it being more remote and more online has made you have to be much more, not delicate, I think delicate's too strong of a word, but you have to be very, very clear about what you're trying to communicate with people, especially more so when you're trying to communicate in written format, is to be, very, very buttoned up with your language. So you're not writing flowery prose and feedback. You're trying to give direct, honest, open feedback, and also trying to caveat that against so it's understandable to someone. This is the feedback that I'm giving you for this reason because of this kind of thing. Easier said than done, it's got to be said. Creativity it's a bit of a bastard, Dev. I think that stuff is much easier when you're in the sort of technical aspects of it. You did this wrong, fix this. It doesn't really kind of work that way when it's more subjective. You kind of have to you have to argue your case a little bit, or go back to oftentimes to your creative foundations and try and get some alignment for that. Like, come on, guys. 8 months ago, we all decided that it was going to be this. So can we please make sure that it is that when you put this thing out? That's kind of where you have to be at. Yeah,
and I think feedback is hard. Like, I think people underrate how difficult it is to give good feedback, not just feedback that you can toss away into the garbage bin after a day's work and be like, well, that was useless. I didn't learn anything at all. But actually putting some thought into feedback that can help someone that also might maybe ruffle some feathers is the wrong term, but cause some pain. Like, I think it's hard, but it's also worthwhile in some ways, and I'm still trying to figure that out myself, because I think it's quite difficult. But I think that's part of the game, and also when you add that other layer of subjectivity and everyone having their own way of looking at things, it's quite interesting. Especially because, like, I don't know if it'd be easier to be in person, and I feel like some things are almost easier to not have that person right beside you, but I don't know, part of me does enjoy going into the office these days in a way that I'm a bit surprised about. Like, I don't know if I would have been thinking that a couple years ago.
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken about it on this podcast before, haven't we? About how so much of North American culture is based around your work and your identity at work. And the pandemic sort of shifted that entire relationship to the home. And then when you don't get your connections that so many people do get through their workplace, you have to find that somewhere else. And I'm still not convinced that a whole lot of that's been done. I'm not sure much of the city infrastructure or indeed like just people's livelihoods have changed to accommodate that new normal. So I think it's something that a lot of people are struggling. I think specifically people in, you know, who are under the age of 40 or don't have kids, who are or single, or, you know, that kind of situation where you're, you know, looking for connections, but oftentimes not finding them, or you're only leaving the house in the evening, or like what are your total number of contacts outside of your partner or outside of your work colleagues? It's quite small, I think, for a lot of people.
No, that's a great point, and it leads into my probably my final personal reflection, and it's a bit of a combo, but I guess as well this year my relationship with alcohol is something I explored a bit more, and then also looking to maybe get on some medication to deal with some anxiety issues I've had, and then also coming to realize that there is a direct correlation between the alcohol intake and anxiety. Shocker, Simon, but that journey has been interesting. Not to say that I found the magic bullet, but I guess when you think about it in terms of wins and losses, that baseball style season is helpful because the season is long as hell, and one game doesn't matter that much, but it matters at the time. And I think that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. So it's a horribly long slog of an MLB regular season I'm looking at, but I'm remaining positive in some ways as well. So,
not to quote Edmonton Oilers general manager Ken Holland at you.
Oh my God.
Stay with me, please, people.
Jesus.
But I never actually really bought into this whole idea that like GMs or people who work in higher elements of sport are like, no, we take it in 10 game segments, or 15 game segments, or whatever
chunks.
Number it is. It's just not one. And it's become never so more apparent than watching the Edmonton Oilers season. And I think it's quite a good metaphor for life. Like, don't judge it based on one day. Judge it based upon, like, you know, a culmination of a month. Like, how are you feeling month to month as opposed to day to day? And I think that actually stands you in pretty good stead. Yeah,
it's tricky, though. Like, I think that's the other aspect of it, where I'm still trying to figure that out, I guess. So that's been fun. And also... big year. Odd number a year, though. Can never trust those ones. But
as previously established, never trust an odd year.
Do you have a final personal reflection before we go into maybe a more year that was?
Really, the positive elements of sticking to things and encouragement, I think, is always a big theme that I'm sort of revisiting, or did revisit in 2023. I think in regards to sort of that leadership role and just trying to think about what kind of leader that you want to be to the people around you, even if you don't have like a managerial title or anything, but if you're in a position where you're trying to, you know, be someone that someone looks to, a person that someone looks to, is that never underestimate the power of trying to encourage people and finding what makes them tick and what is going on in their life. I know this is very basic things, but it's really very important to do those general things every single day to make sure that you're checking in, to try and be kind, etc., etc. It makes a huge difference in people's lives.
Big time. And I will say, even from an early age, Simon, you were always very good at that, especially back when we were working at EA. And I think some of these things you cannot really teach to people as well. I think you can take as many seminars or webinars as you want. Some people just have it. And I think you do, sir. But that is a good place to leave the first half of our Fireside chat while we come back after the break. Things we liked, mostly things Simon liked, because he's got a long list of them. I'll chime in every now and then. We've got the biggest stories of the year, plus we look forward to 2024 coming up next on Open Era. Welcome back to the Open Era Podcast, Fireside Chat Edition 2024, kicking off. United Cup, all that sweet tennis action. We'll get to that soon. But Simon, before that, 2023, favorite things you liked, media moments. You mentioned you gamed out.
I did.
Curious, as someone who is lapsed, I would fully not call myself a gamer anymore. How do you do that? What is it like? And how do you even begin to start?
Well, I think before I forget this thought, by the way, try and find a more disgusted way that Devang and Simon said the word webinar in the last segment. Incredible.
Webinar.
Absolutely incredible.
You've been in them. Am I right? Am I right, people? Come on.
Ugh, a webinar. So, to answer your question, I think it comes from a refinement in terms of what media of choice you're kind of feeling at any one time, because there's so much stuff out there. Like that content ecosphere that we're constantly surrounded by. And this kind of struck me when I was looking at so Polygon released their best of list, the outlet Polygon did. And they just had so much shit in it, Dev. I don't mean shit in I just mean in terms of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, there's TV shows and movies and documentaries, games and books and all these sort of things. And you just think there is just a mountain of stuff available to you that you can always be watching or consuming in some capacity. And I think the list I put together is kind of a reflection of that. But I think important for me is that I wanted to kind of fall back in love with games this year, because I think it took me a long time to sort of recover from working in that industry and sort of stepping away from it.
Yeah.
But I think this year I made a conscious effort, not just because there was a lot of really, really good stuff that was released, but also because when you're sort of trying to teach a little bit of that stuff in your job, you kind of learn to appreciate it a little bit more, because you get to kind of find the joy in it of why you loved it to start with, and try and share that with other people. And I think that's really the thing that I sort of circled when I was making this list. It's like, what stuff brings you joy, and how much of that joy are you able to share with other people? Or the flip side of that is, how much of that joy are other people sharing with you? And I think that's really when we try and find the stuff that really makes us smile. So this list that I put together was stuff that I just really genuinely enjoyed and was excited to share with other people.
And this is primarily on Nintendo Switch, correct?
Now, ladies and gentlemen, Devang and Simon did work in the games industry.
I'm asking questions like, so when you plug in the AC cord into the wall, what happens?
So the answer is no. One of these games is on the Nintendo Switch, and a decent amount of them aren't even games. So I think it would be conducive of me to go through this list. Okay, the first three on the bullet points are Baldur's Gate 3, Alan Wake 2, and Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. In any order, those are probably the three best games of the year, and I think if you're looking at a best of year-end list, those three games will be on there, almost certainly in the top 5. If not, they would just be the top 3, and each of them have their own unique things that stand out about them. But whatever one you wanted to pick to put at the top of your list, they are fantastic, Devang. They are just really, really well-made games that I think really push the industry and push the medium in exciting new directions. So if you've not played any of them, they are dense. Mm-hmm. Some of them are quite challenging. Some of them are quite broken as well in terms of what is expected out of the medium in terms of its overall polish level. But they are fantastic. That's the top line level. They're just really, really good fun.
Someone who's looking to start and finish things in 2024, spoiler for my resolution, kind of want to be able to beat games or play games from beginning to end. And I was looking at Zelda because obviously the reviews have been so positive. So yes, interesting, sir. I will file that away. Yeah, I guess for me right now, and this perhaps goes to maybe dedicating my time in ways that I find the most joy, and finding those hobbies in those different ways. I think I've kind of hit a creative plateau in that regard when it comes to the things I like outside of my job, or the thing that I'm paid to do. So I'm curious, and I'm curious about the gaming world. I mean, from the outside, it looks terrifying based on the discourse, but I know the games are good. So
yeah, I completely get that. I think for someone who, I mean, you work in the creative industry, like that's not mince words. Despite it being sport, like you have to put stuff into your work, and I think that energy is sapping to people, especially when you want to go home and either like wind down, or you're consuming stuff that that you really like have a passionate core for. I think it's hard to challenge yourself and move in different directions and try new things. And I do encourage people to do that. I know it's easy sitting here and saying that, but I think it is very rewarding and kind of gets you outside of yourself for a little bit. So if you can, mentally in a place to do it, I really encourage it.
Yeah, I love that. I'll do a couple. I think going to things is something I enjoyed in 2023, whether it be a play or a concert or even the movies, something as simple as that. But I think something I've maybe not been surprised to find myself dealing with, Bush, and I'm curious where you fall on this, but like dealing with other people generally has never been an issue for me, in the sense of like getting along and I don't know, like being a human being and common courtesy and all of that. But I am finding myself getting irritated maybe more easily, not doing anything about it necessarily, but just not having time for people, just not putting the same effort in that I'm putting in, and it's visibly showing sometimes, I think, and I'm trying to not do that, but I'm trying to balance that against the idea that I do like going out to these public events and going to see things with people. So two contrasts, but yeah, that's the vibe I'm feeling.
No, I totally feel that. I think it's obviously some of that will be a hangover from COVID. I think some of that as well will be I don't want to rag on it too much on this point, but I think there is a certain element of it where, that collectivism versus individual kind of mentality as well. Like, and how you choose to hold yourself in public, I think is an element to that as well, which is that, are we all here to try and enjoy something together, or am I just like fucking here by myself and I'm the most important person here and whatever I need to do to enjoy this, I'm going to do it. I think there are two different ends to that, and I think sometimes it might do a decent service to some people to try and be a little more on the former.
Well said. You've got some other stuff here that I'm not sure if it's a game, an anime series, a comic book, but I'm going to guess some of them are.
Okay, so Broker is a film. I did Broker as a 2-challenge remain during the course of the year. It's a South Korean film about a group of people who are effectively doing child kidnapping and selling. I'm laughing, but it's
okay. Tell me more. Tell me more.
It's like I'm not doing a very good job in marketing this.
Loosely based on the Pizzagate conspiracy theories.
Okay. Sort of, yeah, sort of. As he desperately searches for an actual synopsis of this. Okay, here we go. I'll read you out the Google one. 2 men who make a living by finding new parents for babies who are left anonymously in boxes meet a young woman who left her child behind but now wants it back. 2 investigators are hot on the heels of the baby dealers. Okay, so yes, child trafficking, but I promise you this film is filled with heart. It is filled with heart and love despite it being about child trafficking. It's actually very lovely and speaks to the testament of found family. It's really quite nice.
One of the better reviews I've heard in sometimes. And on that note, I got a positive review for watching films on planes. I think that is maybe a top 2 way to watch a movie, in my opinion. And the other being a theater. I think a plane, because of where you are and where you're located, you're locked in. You're really locked in on the movie and you can concentrate, and I think it's underrated.
Sure. Let's go with that. I don't think...
Moving on.
Okay, 2 animes that I watched during the course of the year. These are not this year, but they are stuff that I've caught up with. I caught up with Demon Slayer, finally, which is excellent. You want to know more about Demon Slayer, there's a billion things written about it, so go and read it. And then the second is Monster, which is, it's a thriller. Probably one of the best animes ever made, it has to be said. It's really, really excellent. It goes beyond the medium, I think. To anyone who doesn't like anime, I would still encourage you to watch this. The twists and turns in it is superb, it's excellent. The voice cast, even in English, is fantastic. And you get like 60 hours of someone yelling, Dr. Tenma, Dr. Tenma, which is always a fun one. So encourage people to check that one out as well.
How are you consuming these? These are shows, correct?
They are shows, yeah.
Okay, so I guess, yeah, I'll take a guess there, but interesting. Okay, I'll take a guess.
Yes, I enjoy sailing the seas, Devang, is what I will say.
Yeah. Aye, okay. Anything else media-wise, Simon? I like how we have so few sporting events listed on here.
I mean, we're a sports podcast. I'm sure we talk about that stuff
True.
enough.
There's enough of that. That's true. We talked about that darts thing for way too long.
We did. I read Saga this year, the comic book. It's world famous. There's a billion things written about it as well. It's amazing. Go and read it if you haven't. It's really, really good. Carly Rae Jepsen released an album this year, which was great. The single was awesome. Psychedelic Switch. Go and listen to that. And then, did you listen to this Ayuli track, Smack in Town? Jesus Christ,
No.
Dev. I love this so much for a track that's 1 minute and 30 seconds long. We cannot play this on the podcast, except for the fact that it comes with a massive explicit warning. It's great.
The way he said the name and everything about the song was perfect. So yeah, I'll watch it. I'll take a look.
Come on, it's 1 minute and 30 seconds long.
Okay, it's good. It's good.
Final moment for me, which I think we can probably include in biggest stories, and if we come on to it, was the Women's World Cup final. I think that'll be a marker that will be left for a long time to come. Not just in the landmark case of women's sport, but obviously the things that happened in that final. The case with Jenny Hermoso, the fall from grace of Rubiales, and everything that's come out of that as well. I think we will look back at that World Cup in, I don't want to say fondly, because fucking hell, it's not great, the things that happened in there. But at the same time, it was a massive achievement, and I think we will look at it in much more rose-colored lenses in probably 10 years' time.
Yeah, that's a great point, and it's funny you mentioned that because I was thinking about some of the crowds and how big that final was in Spain and England and around the world as the PWHL was starting on January 1st in North America, and some of the record-breaking crowds they had for professional women's hockey in North America, which was really cool, and how loud and excited the crowds were in the first few days of that league. So yeah, I mean, it's a game changer, and you'll see the difference in terms of hockey, Simon, and the PWHL, what it means for these players to be able to dedicate themselves professionally to the sport full time. That's something that we've been taking for granted, and I think it'll pay dividends for everyone going forward. So yeah, really, really awesome.
I think in keeping with what we were saying in the first part about trying to look at things more holistically, not doing it day to day and stepping away from it, maybe doing it month to month or year to year, just the idea of the success that women's sport has had in 2023 and looking back even 10 years ago and thinking that was possible, I think people would have laughed you out the room. But to have the achievements that we've seen in the course of the year, I think is fantastic. It's just really, really nice to see. Well
said, sir. You mentioned news. I'm not reading it anymore, but I mean, it was a pretty big year, obviously. A lot of effed up things happening daily. The genocide, the ongoing war in Gaza. Thousands and thousands of people died. A lot of bad stuff going on. There's an election in India coming up in 2024, which is going to be no small deal at all. Huge stakes there as Narendra Modi does his fascist thing. 2023 was big, but I feel like 2024 is going to be big as well, and big in the sense that it's just a word to throw out there to describe bad things happening.
I'd agree with you. I think for all of the, if you want to look at it in sort of Shakespearean terms, the full tragedy I think is going to hit us in 2024, is it not? Getting much more to the pointy end of the stick when it comes to climate change. I mean, that being said, this was the warmest year on record again. We're still not making a dent in what we need to, and by the measure of what happened at the COP summit, we are not taking this remotely seriously.
I mean, for farces, As farces go, that was up there. Holy cow!
I enjoyed the back and forth between British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and British King King Charles. Did you see some of this? I know it's kept out of the news, but for like biggest beef of the year to involve like the monarch of Britain and let's call him the soon-to-be ex-prime minister of Britain was quite funny to watch.
The level of humiliation that you must feel when you're about to get just pummeled by the least charismatic man in the world, Keir Starmer. Like that was how bad do you have to feel if you're Rishi Sunak to lose to that muppet?
Remember when Liz Truss was being pictured next to a lettuce, right? How little did we know that lettuce was actually Sir Keir Starmer?
I know it was a longer clip, but that video of Sunak using a hammer sideways to hit the nail, have you seen that? It's probably one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life. Easily up there.
Oh, man, it's so funny when like you have people who have such level of privilege and have come from such wealth actually have to try and act in public and they can't do it. The hammer is one thing. Did you see the credit card? I think that was in 23 as well, right? But the guy didn't know how to use a fucking credit card. Oh, so good. So funny and so sad at the same time.
We'll lean on the humoristic, of course, because you have to laugh. But on that note, what are you looking forward to this year?
I mean, I have media that I'm looking forward to. I think sometimes it is quite hard to find the light, just given all of the things and how bad it's been in 2023.
Especially in early January, when that light is shining extra bright.
Yeah, indeed.
Blinding even.
I think I think it's going to be a rough year, both politically and I think on a world stage. I think I will say that up front and not be remotely have blinders on when it comes to that element to it. But I do think there'll be small wins along the way, and I think it's about celebrating those where you can find them. I think you'll find politically some results that'll happen at city levels, or they'll happen on ballots that are on particular measures, not just in the United States, but in the UK. I think you'll find a bunch of interesting stuff happening there. I think a lot of the big stuff is going to be bad. I don't think there's any other ways around it. I think you'll see like emboldened far right, and I think you will see some outright fascist leaders winning very major states or retaining power in those states. But I think you'll see like at a grassroots level, you'll see responses to that. And I think that's where you want to kind of circle for where to find your kind of light and levity in this whole thing, because there is consistently people doing amazing things, not just at the mutual aid level, but at an organization level. And I think those are the people that should be really, really celebrated. I know they're celebrated already, but to double down on that and to really, really find light in which is probably going to be quite a dark time, Dev.
Yeah, I'll say I'm looking forward to Mission Impossible Part 2, the second part of Dead Reckoning. Another movie I watched on a plane, fantastic. Vanessa Kirby, 5 stars. But yeah, films, cinema, Simon.
Yeah.
Always looking forward to that.
June 2, I'm excited for that. I think it's going to be dope.
Yeah.
Enjoy the first one. We'll see how they land the plane to see if they address some of the concerns and criticisms that people had. I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt to see if there's to complete that story. And then the second part of the Final Fantasy VII remake. I'm such a big Final Fantasy fan that it's really exciting to see that game getting remade. It's kind of like groundbreaking, really, to think about the game made in the 90s about eco-terrorism to still hold the place that it does today.
Yeah,
it's kind of wild, really.
I have vivid memories of playing that game and age as well. And this is probably a conversation to save for off air, but can I get a PS1 that wouldn't cost $9 million and play that? Are there ones still out there that work?
I'm sure there is. I'm sure we can find a way to get that over to you, Dev.
Fantastic. And on that note, we'll hit a break and then we'll come back. We'll do our resolutions. Plus, we'll get to 2 challenges remaining on Open Era. Welcome back to the Open Air Podcast. New Year's resolution, Simon. I don't know what your success rate is in terms of following through on this kind of stuff, but might as well try it again.
Not bad. It has to be said, not particularly bad when it comes to this stuff.
I think you're the type of person that would follow through on this as a principle.
I don't know it's necessarily... I don't think I'm any better than anyone else when it comes to this stuff. I think it's mostly just that I have figured out what works for me and what stuff will actually hold me accountable. I think when you spend as long inside of your own head pontificating about the world, the way that I do, and yourself, that you tend to get a pretty good read on what you will and won't do. So I think that's kind of why I've had success. And then like trying to do like small tweaks as opposed to massive big things is always an important one. That's kind of what I learned a few years ago, and it's kind of stuck for me. Like for example, trying to lose weight or anything, or just like trying to eat a bit healthier, don't eat breakfast and eat lunch instead, and like start your day after that. Like that's not a hugely challenging one, or that's not advice, by the way. Absolutely don't do that if that's not
my Timbits. Simon, my Timbits, sir.
Exactly. It just worked for me, is what I'm saying. So
yeah. That's fair. No, I got you.
One of the other things for me as well that I thought was really successful is like that I've stuck with a long time now, and it's interesting you're talking about alcohol as well. It's like I've not drank in a long time, right? I think that's one thing that was a resolution for me as well, which was the realization of just, okay, I will have sparkling water when I go out. That's what I will have. And I stuck with it through a month, and I'm 5 years at this point, and I don't really feel the need to go back to it. Alcohol-free beer works for me fine. I don't really miss alcohol. I miss I don't even miss the socializing. I still get to go out and do all the same things. I just don't have all the stuff that comes with it. So that's another good one that I managed to stick with, and I was happy that I did.
Well, la-ti-da, good for you. I'm gonna try a couple. I think this one is slightly attainable, or it's somewhat more attainable. But if I open a tab on my browser, I gotta finish reading what's on that tab within 30 minutes, or I gotta X out and close it forever. Because I think I've developed a real bad habit of opening up a million things I want to read, and then at the end of the day, maybe getting to like two of them, maybe, or one of them, and kind of living my life that way in terms of the way I take in information. So I think I need to slow down a bit and actually absorb these things. So that is the main one for me, Simon, because I think it's multifaceted in a few different ways. I
have two. The first one is trying to incorporate some of that deep breathing stuff into my life. I went through a phase, I want to say, this was pre-COVID, so I want to say like 2018, where I did an entire year of meditation. So I did 20 minutes every day. The consistency, I don't know how I managed to do that, but it was... And then I feel like in the long run, I don't know that I got the benefits that I think I was looking for out of it. I think I was looking more for a practical tool than for like, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, enlightenment. I have no idea. And I think like trying to incorporate a practice for just a minute and a half a day, or 2 minutes of any of the 4, 7, 8 breathing or box breathing stuff, and doing it first thing in the morning and before I go to bed. Like a minute and a half to 2 minutes seems very, very obtainable to me, and I think it will make a big difference in terms of having that tool available to you when things get a bit stressful.
Love that. Also started doing cold plunges and really enjoy doing that. So
how do you find it?
Continue
Is it
doing
working?
that. Yeah. In a few different ways, and doing the sauna as well. I've enjoyed doing that. But as someone who has very effed up limbs and joints and hips and backs, I found it really effective. So yeah, fully recommend. You feel like a new person when you do it as well, or at least I have so far. So I will, if I sound like one of those testimonial people, it's because I am one of those people now. So
one of the big ones I made as well, like I guess it's a big one, but is committing to more tech-free evenings, like less screen time and less tech in my life. I did it a couple of times in 2023 and wanted to commit more to it in 24, which was like just picking a day of the week and then picking like a 3 or 4 hour block where if you're at home, there is no screen time at all. Like you just remove technology from it and do something else. And as I think you will not find two people who are more connected to media in some capacity. So I think if I'm able to do that, I'll be very happy.
Yeah. God, I love that. Yeah, I mean, that is something I want to do more of as well. Like not have my phone with me, or not have, Yeah, not have that stuff right beside me, but we'll see how that goes. Okay. Anything else, Simon, before we get to 2 challenges remaining?
Not really. I had a bullet point here saying Canada washed ? I'm not entirely sure where I was going with that bullet point.
City life ain't so easy these days, affordability wise. Not many places you can go in Canada to live.
Is there anywhere left?
Comfortably. Yeah. It's bleak, man. It's bleak. Now it's like minor wins, like, oh, like your rent won't be raised for a couple months. It's like, yes, but geez. Yeah. It's tough out there.
Tough sledding, people. Stay with it. Open Air has got your back. Don't worry. We'll go on a rent strike with you.
2 challenges remaining. Curveball. We're talking tennis, Simon. Because we haven't talked tennis at all on this show. But I'll open it up here, though, and vague and ambiguous enough. But what is the thing you're most curious about this year? Like, what do you want to see the most? What's the thing that is going to be top of mind for you in tennis 2024?
Naomi Osaka, I think, is the answer.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty straightforward one. She is a proverbial giant elephant in the room. She is outsized across not just the women's tour, but the entirety of tennis. I think you could certainly make the case that with the retiring Rafael Nadal, she is easily the biggest star in the sport globally. She's been away from the sport for 15 months after giving birth and really not loving it. It was great to see her back. I have absolutely no idea what she's gonna look like, how well she's gonna do. If you tell me that she's gonna win the US Open in September, then I would sure, it sounds good. And if you tell me that she's retired by August, I would also be like, yeah, it seems reasonable. So I'm really excited to see what happens.
Great shout. That match with Pliskova was hilarious and befuddling and confusing, but wonderful to see Naomi back there. That's a very good pick, Simon. I'm gonna cheat and pick 2 things, but I'll pick Rafa for one reason. We've said this 8 million times, but this truly does feel like the last hurrah, and I'm fascinated to see what he can bring out of his body, because Lord knows he's pushed himself to the absolute limits. But watching him against Dominic Thiem, I had extreme sad feelings that I was a bit surprised about, but also recognizing that, I guess a part of me is also recognizing that the way I watch tennis is changing as well, Simon. And so as part of one of my resolutions, I think I need to get back to my roots of watching more sicko hours tennis. So I'm excited to do that, but I'm also excited to see Nadal kind of try and do some Nadal stuff ahead of the Olympics, which should be nuts.
I think he might be done, Dev. I think he might be washed.
Maybe, but that's probably true. Nadal washed, Canada washed, etc.
This is the episode title.
Canada washed. You know what? Pierre Poilievre, have you seen him? How he thinks lightning is created? We're effed, man. We are effed. Okay. I don't want to keep talking about that.
The literal embodiment of bloody Milhouse is going to be Prime Minister of Canada.
Milhouse. Jeez Louise. Okay. Anything else? Anything United Cup hot takes, Bush? You've been following?
I have followed it.
Iga Swiatek being a bit of a jerk. You see this?
There's definitely beef there, isn't there, between her and help me, Dev. Help me, Dev.
Zhang?
Name escapes me.
Zhang?
Yeah, jeez.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Jesus, we're away for a month and look what happens to us. I've forgotten all the anything else? Not really. I don't read too much into the Djokovic being beaten by De Minaur. I think Djokovic is still carrying.
The balls are too heavy.
Yeah,
balls are too heavy, man. His wrist, yeah.
Nah, I don't think so. I don't read a lot into this kind of section of the tour and this kind of first few weeks before the Australian Open. It doesn't do a huge amount for me. I think why we felt comfortable recording a Fireside chat episode instead of covering the United Cup.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Next week will be interesting, though.
I will say, Simon, Novak won in Adelaide before the Australian Open last year, but that told us jack. We didn't need that to know he was going to have a good tournament. But we'll see. We'll see how that wrist is doing. We'll see how the women's tour shakes out with Naomi Osaka back on tour, which is awesome. And we'll leave it there. Happy 2024. A reminder, we are on patreon.com/open era. Join us there, get the show ad free. Join us on the Discord where we're chatting tennis all the time. And if you join us on Patreon, you get the shows early on Sunday. We're also on x.com/open era pod, where we are very occasionally still posting on that hell site. For producer Dylan on the ones and twos, and for Simon, thank you so much for listening to Open Era. We'll talk to you next time.